So this is Johannes Kagerer in the middle. Very warm welcome to our moderator. So, and I'll hand the word to you and let you introduce the panelists, and I'm curious to hear,
Thank you
good morning.
Very much, Anna. I will keep the introduction very short because we don't have much time and we have a very important question to discuss. I want to extend the thank you. Anna already thanked the Film Festival Munich for raising this question on a Sunday morning and offering the stage to discuss the right-wing movements and governments in Europe and beyond. And then I want to extend the thanks also to Hessen Film for creating this space and putting together this very interesting panel that I'm very excited to hear all of your perspectives. And we want to have a real conversation, and that means we want to use this space also to hear your perspectives, some housekeeping rules, because we have limited time and we want to hear many perspectives. We want to hear your statements. Please introduce yourself later when we will open to the audience, and keep your statement crisp and short, and add a question to one of the panelists because we invited them to come here today and we want to hear their perspectives today on stage. But you're invited to share your statement as well. Please introduce yourself, share your statement, and ask questions to the panel later. Now, we want to start, and I want to start our discussion with Marta Golba-Naumann, who is here today from Poland. You're a filmmaker, and you produced all these Sleepless Nights, for example, but you're more than a filmmaker. You're not only a producer, you also are involved in the industry section of Her Docs, the first documentary festival in Poland focusing on female auteurs. So that's why I want to emphasize more on the structural and institutional part of the Polish film community later, also because Poland is a very interesting example in this regard. But I want to start with the wider political picture of Poland, because I think most of us followed, especially in the last weeks, the last election. Unfortunately, the right-wing candidate was able to secure a win on razor's edge. Last year, a broad coalition by Donald Tusk was able to win an election with a pro-European coalition and oust a right-wing government. Between those two events, how do you see the current situation of the arts and the film community in Poland?
Good morning. Thank you, first of all, for invitation. So, of course, like Polish art scene is holding its breath again. We had the elections that voted out the right-wing government almost one and a half year ago, which led to a huge relief after 8 years, and which also led to certain changes in the cultural institutions, which opened many ways for artists that have been closed for the past 8 years, definitely. But this last elections showed us again and reminded us and a bit slowed down this euphoria that we had in the past time, that the society is still very, very much divided. So in terms of like a situation of the artists, the shift in the institutions will not be that soon, because of the political structure as well. It will not be impossible very, very soon. But I think it's very important now for us to think, what can we do in this next 2 years? Because this is like a warning signal, the presidential election, but in 2 years we have again a governmental election. And this may again close many paths and bring again the challenges that we are still recovering from after the past decades on the institutional level above all.
Thank you. I want to hand over the microphone to Ádám. Ádám, you're a Hungarian filmmaker, and Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, coined the phrase of illiberal democracy, and he became kind of the beacon of all sorts of right-wing and authoritarian-leaning governments worldwide. But you started out as a young filmmaker before Orban. So could you take us back to a time before Orban became, like I think Jean-Claude Juncker said, the dictator? What was it like to grow up as a young filmmaker in Hungary before Orban, and what changed when he took office, and what is the situation today?
Thanks for the question. I welcome you all for this early panel. This is a cute question, Johannes. I'm not going to dwell on like what was before too much. Before it was democracy. With democratic institutions. With democratic institutions in film funding and in culture funding. This does not exist anymore. So I think even the description for the panel describes the situation too mildly. So often people think that what is going on in Hungary is something mild, it's a turn to the right. No, it's not a turn to the right, it's a full-blown dictatorship that forced me to leave my country 3 years ago because I was blacklisted as a creator, I could get funding, and it happened over and over again. I received calls to censor my films from the Film Institute, private calls threatening consequences that I'm not going to get future funding, and I am a filmmaker who made the first gay coming out film in Hungarian, in Hungary. So that was my first feature film, was the first gay coming out film, and after that I did not receive funding for 5 years. I applied with 4 projects. One project was sneakily submitted without my name, you know, in the writing phase, and after I appeared as a director, funding was miraculously cut. And I moved away from the country when the Film Institute threatened me in a personal Zoom call to re-edit my film and edit out all provocative political content from the film that they deemed to be left-wing provocation. These are their exact words, left-wing provocation, people. And they wanted me to edit the left-wing provocation part out of it. Otherwise, you know, it wouldn't be beneficial for me for future funding. This is how they said it. And I'm not mentioning names because I want to avert a lawsuit in case, you know, anybody is sitting here from the Film Institute. So this is what happened, and you know, I decided to go away and not commit suicide in Hungary. And this is, I'm just one of the creators, okay? I don't want to pose as a national hero here or anything. It's happening to lots of creators. It's happening to creators who have far greater reputation than I have. I just happen to be sitting here. Everybody's struggling with it. Right now, if you're a minority creator in Hungary, in film, or in arts in general, or you come from the left, or you're not in line with the government, you're not going to receive funding. You have almost zero chance. You might get lucky. That's your only chance. Your chance is like 1 in a million. When you get lucky because you personally know a board member, let's say, and they like you, or something like that happens. You know, you can only get funding through nepotism, basically. That's your only chance. And it was kind of like that in 2012 when I made my first feature film. Only less so. So this became, that's when the Orban regime's film funding came into power. I think 2011. That's when they changed like all the cultural institutions. But it's just getting more and more radical. So they are over like 2 generations of board members now. Like they change the board members every couple of years, and they make them more radical. And this is obviously not against people who work for the Film Institute, who are just there because they happen to be working there and their heart is in the right place. This is mostly the leading members of the board who dictate policy. And I gave you an outlook of the Hungarian film funding system. It's kind of the same for all arts. I also directed theater in Hungary. My last play was, funding for my last play was cut during production. And I received a letter that we did not pass some kind of cultural test, and I have to pay back the funding, half of the funding money.
Ádám, I really want to thank you for the personal perspective.
I can go on, I'm sorry.
And you will. But I want to emphasize the film you were referring to at the beginning, Land of Storms. It premiered at the Berlinale in 2014. Yes. And we will talk about this in detail later because it's also from the film itself is very, very interesting. But I want to emphasize for this panel that this is exactly what we want to talk about. So our question here is the threat to arts by right-wing movements and governments, and we will not talk, as you have already witnessed, about a vague threat to artistic freedom, but what we want to emphasize, what we want to talk about is what this means in practical terms for filmmakers, but also for societies, what it means in practical questions like the reimagining or constriction of national or common narratives, or for example for representation of minorities or identities, and this is where we will talk about your film later. For now, I want to bring in Julia. You are a writer, director, producer, and a professor. That's why I also want to talk about the situation of young filmmakers and talents in the industry. You worked in Hungary in the recent years. You worked in Poland in recent years. But first of all, let's bring in the perspective from Germany. Are we an island in a sea of rising right-wing sentiments and movements? Or do these developments that we just heard about also apply in Germany? What's your perspective?
The situation is not as drastic, but we can totally see it coming. Let me give 2 examples of where we can feel it already. We also have our, the climate also shifted to the right. And so one example here is the public television was and still is the strongest partner of filmmaking. But now they would need more money just because inflation is coming, everything is getting more expensive, and they can't ask for it. It's the first time that they will not have more money, although they would actually, because it's something they get like every 6 years, and there is a commission, and they give a calculation how much they need, and then they will get it. So all of us pay a little bit more. And it's the first time they won't, because they say it's so unpopular, and there are too many Bundesländer, federal states, where they wouldn't agree to it. So the political climate in the society will not agree. So it's higher. And we totally feel that already, because the first thing they cut is, of course, cinema, because it's so unimportant for them. It's a niche. But they were always a very important partner for, let me say, risky projects. Projects that wouldn't maybe earn money on the market, but yeah, that would be risky and wouldn't need to earn money, but would be on festivals, try something, give new voices, visibility. So we will totally see that fading away, and it's already happened in the last 2 years. They cut down again and again and again. The other thing that is already very concrete, it took us a decade to implant diversity into guidelines of all the institutions, that marginalized groups would have a quote maybe. And now it took us really a decade to establish it, to fight for it, to have it in the guidelines, and now, after the last election, it was cut out. It didn't make it into the FFR, into the law. And that will be, that will totally change what kind of films we will see in the next years. I mean, I want to say that there are federal institutions who still have it in their guidelines, the Bavarian Film Funding, the Hamburg one, and I don't know about Hessen. Do you still have it in the guidelines that you support, especially projects that come from marginalized groups? I don't know. Yes, so that's are great examples, and we all hope that you will stay true to it, but we can see that there is a political climate that, I don't know, drops it easily and loses it easily, which you couldn't say so loud and so clearly maybe 2 years ago. Now it's so popular and normal to say we don't need that shit. Yeah, I mean, AFD, I got a small feeling with my film And Tomorrow the Entire World, how they treat art when they try to sort of, put repression on it. It didn't work out at all, but it gave us a smell of it, and we all know it's 25% of the population in Germany who agreed to their program, and the cultural program says it all. It's horrible. If they will be in parliaments, we will experience what you experienced and what you experienced.
Thank you. Olha, you're not a filmmaker. You are the head of the Lviv Media Forum, which is an NGO that has at its core a conference that is taking place annually in Lviv, and that is about the widest spectrum of media. So it's film, it's also TV, public broadcasting systems, social media, and so we heard about the situation in Poland, in Hungary, and in Germany. So the question for you is, because you're an expert on also the region and Europe, what threats, from your perspective, does this ascent of right-wing movements and governments pose to the media systems and open societies and democracy pose in Europe and in these countries especially?
Thanks for having me today. Actually, I would start.
Is the microphone working? Yeah. Okay.
Actually, I would start maybe with the fact that I wouldn't, repeat what my colleagues said. I would maybe focus rather on solutions. Why what media did wrongly. And how they contributed to raising this far-right sentiment in the democratic countries, and what can we do differently to avoid this tendency in the future. Because as of now, we see it clearly that in many European countries that tend to be democratic before the far-right movement is gaining power. In Ukraine, it has never been a case, because the only the only right party got 5% in the parliament after the Revolution of Dignity in 2014. But in general, I would start maybe with the terminology. First of all, when I say media, I would relate to quality, liberal, independent media, just to make sure that we don't talk about the malign sources of information. And second, I would stress that the fact that far-right shift in the public discussion is just an outcome, it's not a cause. The cause is populism. And I think that to answer this question, we have to think what caused the populism in the in the public discussion. So I would say that first of all, media just overlook problems in the societies that the majority of people wanted to talk about. So they were, like, these people were just forced to look for different platforms to discuss their problems on the everyday basis. So in this regard, also social platforms contributed to the problem, because the bright content, the very loud content is promoted on social platforms. You probably experience this, that when you post something, you know, full of emotions, it gets more promoted by the algorithms. So in this regard, we also have to take a look on social media and how they influence the whole agenda. I also think that like media in general, they need to be more they just avoided to be proactive. They reflect the agenda, they are not shaping it. So you can imagine that the 80 tweets of Elon Musk a day just land in the news feeds without being, you know, analyzed, and audiences don't get a general idea about what does it mean, what actually Elon Musk wants to say, and how he influences, what are his aims. So this, you know, this passive behavior of quality media that supposed to be the leaders of the public opinion, I think these are the root causes that right-wing parties and right-wing ideas get more and more popular in the region.
Thank you very much. I think we got a first understanding of the situation in the wider region, and your remarks lead to a question that I want to put at the core of this panel. So we discussed, and we have it in the title, that film as an art is under threat. And a distinct question from this first question is film the right medium to answer this threat, because of its long production cycles and the long attention span that is required to see a whole film? I want to ask this question to Ádám and Julia, and to you regarding to your two films that you made. Ádám, starting with your film, you already mentioned that you put a queer love story at the heart of your film, and the question of the representation of identities is at the core of the right-wing cultural wars. So could you elaborate about your film, and do you see film as the appropriate medium to answer the threat from, you know, right-wing challenges?
I don't think that film can be weaponized against dictatorships. I mean, politics can be weaponized against dictatorships. So it takes a popular movement of people to fight a regime. The regime doesn't change in Hungary because people are not, you know, people are powerless to fight it. It's not, film is not going to make it change. However, what the arts have to do here and in an authoritarian regime is to focus on what you just said, Johannes, minority representation. So they should focus on narratives that those in power don't want to see. And both of my films focus on minority narratives. My first film is focuses on a gay love triangle, and my second film was about POCs, people of color who are discriminated against in Hungary. So it's both of them are minority stories, and the second one grows out of a almost 10-year-old work of mine with the Roma community in Hungary. So I think this is what you're supposed to do if you're a minority creator, or if you're a creator in an authoritarian regime, to give voice to minority narratives, because those are going to be sorely missed, and they're never going to make the mainstream financing, you know?
And can you tell us more about the reactions towards your film, not only from the funding bodies that you already told us about, but the general audiences, like people that saw your film? How did they react?
The queer film was very muted, but then again, our government conducted like widespread anti-LGBTQ plus propaganda. We have an anti-LGBTQ plus law, not as severe as in Russia, but we do have one. So the reception was very, very muted. Basically, only the liberal media received it and mostly praised it, but audiences stayed away from movie theaters. My second film was more, you know, wider publicized, or went more mainstream, but I think there, even the reaction from the mainstream audiences were also very muted. Of course, none of the films were really reviewed in right-wing media, so in government media, because they did not want to give me media surface to publicize the film. So this is also an interesting thing, that instead of bashing you, they just say nothing, because that's even better, because if they would criticize you, there would still be publicity, right?
And because we are here in a very European panel, did you get any reactions from Germany? Because your film is not only set in Hungary, it's also set in Germany, and specifically in the professional football world. Which is a super interesting background for these
topics. The gay love story is set in the professional football world, yes. I mean, the German reviews were fantastic. I mean, reviews anywhere were fantastic. Like, but I don't want to boast, sorry, it's not a panel about like my artistic achievements, so I'm just going to leave that at.
No, but you should boast about it, and you all should know that the film is available on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, it is available. It was distributed. Okay, I'm going to advertise. So the title of Land of Storms, Sturmland, auf Deutsch, and it was distributed by Salzgeber in Germany, and World Service M-Appeal, and it's still available on Amazon Prime. And it went to a lot of places. It had a lot of good reviews. But I wanted to say something else about, before you asked, about the arts, what the arts can do. With the Roma community and minority narratives. Can you ask your question, your original question again, Johannes?
The original question for this round was if film is the right medium to answer the threat of right-wing populism.
Yeah, I think, you know, what creators can do in these authoritarian regimes is you can basically, the only option you have is you have to detach yourself from the regime's financing. So you have to understand that for a while you have to make very low budget film. To say the things that you want to say. This is always an option, and some of my peers and successful Hungarian filmmakers have already done this, and I am also planning to do this in the future, because that is pretty much the only option you have. And this is, in a way, fighting back. I just wanted to say that, you know, grassroots ways of fighting back, these are always more time-consuming, but then again can be potent to say what you want to say.
Thank you. Julia, you mentioned your film Tomorrow the Whole World, which I still remember you were attacked by a hit piece from a outlet that is very close to the AfD. But I want to talk more about your film Treasure. It was shot in Germany and Poland, and I want to come back to the question, is film the right medium to answer right-wing threats? Now, not focusing on minority representation, but the other question I raised at the beginning, the constriction of national or common narratives. Because your film is about a woman that embarks on a journey with her father to Poland to discover the family history. And it deals with a question of the Shoah, which is at the core, of course, of these narratives that right-wing movements are challenging.
Yeah, no, I love to talk about it, but let me start that I totally think film, series, media can change the world to the worse, definitely and easily, we all agree on that, and also to the better. And that's why it's so important to the government to influence it. And I also want to say that women are not a minority. We are just a marginalized group. And yeah, it's important to say that again and again, because we are not. And it's so important how women are portrayed. And that's, I rather say it's a marginalized group, not a minority. And it's so important that we get a voice, keep that voice up, and then let me...
Did I say that?
Yeah, you said it's about minority representation, but
with regard
I think
of
I know, but
Adam's
women, are
not
definitely, but it's still often it's said diversity and women need a seat next to all the other groups. But in a way, I feel yes, definitely, but it's not a minority. So yeah, that was very interesting for us to see what we experienced in Poland, because we got a sense of what could happen here. There was an agenda from the peace government that in stories that are connected to the Holocaust, Polish characters should be portrayed as heroes or victims. And there is a family in this film that the father-daughter couple meets. They are Americans, but the father was born in Łódź, and they come back, and there is a family in that apartment, and they are complex characters. Interesting, complex characters. Not victims, not heroes, but also not clear assholes, just complex characters. And already that was enough, so our wonderful Polish producer said, wow, although everybody in the committee loved the script, it didn't make it. He had talked to every single person, and even we couldn't apply for the automatic tax rebate, because they would also check it and maybe say yes, so you shoot the film with that money, but they would take it away, like what happened to you. And that was a whole new dimension, and it's threatening to experience that. So we had to rebuild all the Polish scenes in Erfurt and Halle.
In the end, it is now a French-German co-production?
Exactly. We made it a Polish co-production because that was such an important creative voice in all of that. Our producer, all the head of departments, so they are co-producer, but financial-wise, there is not one single cent.
And same question to you, Julia. The film also premiered at the Berlinale, and then it premiered in Krakow Film Festival.
Yeah.
How was the reaction of the general public, of the people who saw the film?
Two very different events, maybe. The Krakow opening night was with a lot of official people, so there were some critical voices about the film that came to me more through my Polish team members, because they had talked to people from the audience. But we had two more screenings that I attended in the Academy of Arts in Krakow, and that were maybe the best screenings that I ever had with these films, and I loved it, and that was great, and people said they'd love more of that kind of stories.
Marta, coming back to the institutional level of the film industry in Poland, in your regard, you mentioned that the film industry is still recovering and the institutions are still recovering from what the peace government did. We noticed also in Germany that there was a challenging situation at the Polish Film Institute. Now there is a new head. Can you explain what happened at the Polish Film Institute, and are you optimistic of the development there?
Regarding the Polish Film Institute, I think it's also like a very complex situation. Polish Film Institute is celebrating 20 years of existence this year. And at the same time, Polish legislation for film financing at the same time. Before 2005, we still had the regulations from before '89. So this is a big country, and the industry is also very big. So obviously, like building the system, the whole system takes a long time. And with the coming of peace to power, this whole process was also stopped, which also makes it now very difficult to recover because it was still kind of in a very good, very well working, but still developing in many aspects institution. We have, after many turbulences, now recently new head of the institute. I think we need to observe it now, how it works. People are optimistic because, of course, like what we experienced the past 8 years, cutting the financing for critical voices, cutting the financing for voices that are maybe endangering like your film. And many filmmakers with the topics like you that had to finance their films outside of Poland. So this is optimistic, but maybe I would come back a bit and think about coming back to this, what we need to do now within these 2 years, because as we know, this shift comes very fast. You know, like we cannot expect it. It comes always faster than we think. So, what you, Olja, said, what I feel now in terms of also, because we are here also in a certain privileged situation here sitting, like we as filmmakers. And it's not only us who decide about the shift. And combining your previous question with this question about the institutional situation, like we need to find a way how to come together and find a way of changing the narratives, changing the communication, like helping the narratives step back from this very right and radical shifts, understanding that this has like many dimensions. And this is, I believe, the role also of us artists, filmmakers, cultural institutions who are independent to get out a bit of this our only bubble and learn how to work more with media, maybe what communication we are giving out to the world. Also more inclusive from our, more understanding and inclusive from our side towards, I'm not saying, of course, like very radical views, but very often behind the very radical views, there is something different happening.
And do you see designated allies, like whom to turn to find solidarity?
I would say local institutions. I mean, I think we need to start from local institutions and work in the local communities, because this is where we need to start with the change.
Olja, I want to raise the question about the very much non-local institutions, and I want to introduce my question with an anecdote. Because 2 years ago in Kiev, I gave a presentation about German film funding to Ukrainian filmmakers. And after me, a representative of the CNC, the French funding body, spoke, and she gave like twice as many opportunities in film funding for Ukrainian filmmakers. And after us, 3 representatives of US aid were talking about the tenfold possibilities that US aid provided for Ukrainian filmmakers, media professionals, journalists. Now we all know about the funding cuts the Trump administration did to US aid. Can you tell us what these funding cuts mean to the media systems in Ukraine, but also the wider region?
Yeah, actually, in the context of our topic, I would highlight what USAID withdrawal cost to the media freedom, and actually how it just freed a space for these radical talks. So in Ukraine, USAID funded support to the media who found themselves in a very tough position due to the Russian invasion. And I saw how supportive it was, you know, because USAID has used to have a very flexible funding mechanism, and Ukrainian media used it to actually to support their operations, but also to be a voice of the local communities. I would bring this point in this audience that media are a critical infrastructure. And when we will turn to the solutions, it will be my first point, because we have to consider media as critical infrastructure in democratic countries. Ukrainian case 100% proves it, because people who escaped the occupied territories, they witness that media are as access to information is as important as bread, for example. So democracies should consider media as critical infrastructure, because authoritarian regimes already do. So that's what they use. But in terms of the USAID withdrawal, we have now a vacuum here. 2/3 of the media support in Ukraine was funded by USAID. It means that nobody will replace it. We as a Media Forum did a research on Ukraine's losses and Ukraine's media losses in the full-scale invasion for the World Bank. And we came to the conclusion that media sector has lost around 400,000 euros, 400 million euros in the past years. So nobody will replace this money, and that's the reality. But I also talked to media professionals from other countries, for example, from Latin America, and they revealed that USAID withdrawal has also put journalists under the threat, because in authoritarian regimes, journalists got support, you know, legal support, security measures funded by USAID. And basically also USAID withdrawal was also a step of the populist political forces, because this is a very, you know, short-sighted approach. When you focus on short-term solutions rather than invest in the future and the long-term things that all the people will benefit from it. So this is about USAID withdrawal in a nutshell.
Thank you. Before we open to the audience in a minute, I want to ask one very brief question to every one of you, and starting with Ádám. Ádám, you already gave your assessment, your very bleak assessment on today's situation in Hungary. What is your outlook? Yesterday we saw a record number of 200,000 people in Budapest going to the streets in a pride event that the government tried to outlaw and clearly failed. We already talked about it, so I know your bleak and very clear assessment of the current situation. Is there anything that gives you hope for the future of Hungary?
Well, I mean, of course the country is still there, but not. I don't really hope for regime change, to tell you the truth, Johannes. It's too far gone. So we do have a strong opposition candidate now, but the Orbán regime is so far gone. in their policies that next year there are going to be elections, but I don't hope for a transfer of power. And if there is a transfer of power, I highly doubt that it's going to be a peaceful transfer of power. And this is not just pessimism. It's really too far gone. It's very, very, it's fantastic from, you know, whoever marched at the Pride yesterday, and it's fantastic to show the government that ultimately, or the regime, that ultimately their power over the people means nothing. But the real situation, the political situation is very far from this. They have gained control of the whole country, all the institutions, all the power resides with them, all wealth resides with the government right now. So if an opposition candidate does win, and even if there is a peaceful transfer of power, I highly doubt that the opposition candidate is going to fill out the 4 years, because he would or they would be, you know, against a whole system of institutions that are still in the government hands, because the wealth is concentrated around the government right now, around the regime. Just like in I make it sound very complicated, but it's the same kind of oligarchy as in Russia. So think about it like that. It's the exact same thing. Hungary has copied the same model, and it's in a place. And it will be very hard to get rid of. Like, think about like overthrowing Putin in Russia. Now that's like overthrowing Orban. Only Orban's, opposition hasn't started miraculously dying yet. But maybe they will start next year. You know, who knows when they start the same thing.
This brings me right back to Olha to ask the very same question, because also in Kiev there was a Pride event, I think 1 week or 2 weeks ago. And the main reason that the Pride event can happen in Kiev is that the armed forces of Ukraine are still holding the Russians at bay, because in Moscow it was outlawed 10 years ago, and we haven't seen a Pride event there ever since. So, of course, speaking about the future in Ukraine, I think it's the most decisive one, because it's the most challenged one. What is your outlook, speaking about the media sector? The future. Yeah,
actually you raised a very important questions, because how we say in Ukraine, Ukrainian armed forces is the world's largest human rights defenders group. It's 1 million of people of all professions, like writers, journalists, teachers, drivers, who defend our right to be ourselves. So I truly hope that we will regain our future thanks to them. As for the media, I would say there are several key points. First, I mentioned what media can do is to reflect the needs of the people, to be a safe space for the people to discuss very common things, like how keep my children safe, how actually can I earn money to provide for my family, what changes should we do to stop, economical recession, what means to be a responsible citizen, because sometimes we focus on very emotional topics and just overlook very simple everyday experiences of people. Second is that what I mentioned is to recognize media as a critical infrastructure. It's definitely also the time for practicing solution-oriented journalism, not just point the problems out, but to search for solutions, and solutions could be found in the country but also worldwide, and then they could be useful. But I would also say about advocating for algorithm transparency across the world. The social platforms have to make their algorithm transparent so that we are we are sure that they are not a space, you know, to amplify the voices of the far right, you know, or very conservative groups. This is maybe the key points. These are the key points that we have to come up with when we think about how the media's role in preventing the shift, the right-wing shift, not in Europe, but actually around the world.
Thank you. Marta, you already raised the urgency because the next elections in Poland will be fought again between the pro and anti-European camps. What is your outlook on Poland and specifically for young filmmaker talent starting out now in these challenging times?
Well, there is definitely a short window now, which hopefully will not be that short, because as you, Julia, also mentioned already, like the threat that comes with being back in the very far right-oriented system is limitation for new voices. Limitation of support for films which are not necessarily potentially very commercial ones, and the national institutions should be the guardians of these voices, of these films, both institutions and the TV and the national TV station. So that's why I really feel we have a very strong voices in our industry. We have a very strong directors, producers that already learned in the past decade how to unite outside of the system to make their work happening, to make their work visible. And I think we now need some tools and ideas how to go out with those voices to local communities, a bit broader than only like the main cinema halls, like to really go and engage in dialogue with the people who would not normally go to cinema, who would not normally see the diversity of what minorities experience, what marginalized voices are having to say, so that they see it as an opportunity and not as a threat. Because if they see it as a threat, then the radicalism goes on.
Thank you. Thanks, Julia. You are also a professor here at the Munich Film School, so I want to ask you, in your outlook, what generation do you see among your students? Are these students apathetic in disregard of the political situation, or are they invested? Are they getting active?
Yes, very much so, and that is something that keeps me optimistic. Not only our students who might be out of a special bubble, but also what I see in this younger generation that will take over. I think there was a point of no return, that they wouldn't allow themselves to be silenced and not have a voice. I really hope so, and I think so, and that's why I'm still optimistic.
Thank you very much. So now we open this panel to the audience. We have one microphone over there, and we already have a question in the second row. Maybe you can already raise your hand if you have a question, so we can make sure the microphone reaches you in time. And as I said, please introduce yourself, and you're welcome to make statements, but keep it short. We have 5 minutes left.
Yes, I'll try to be fast. Thank you very much for this panel. What I want to ask is, in a way, I feel that both the right and the left has sort of roots into anti-establishment kind of ideas, right? So the left is, everyone is being oppressed in some sort of way, and now politics is instrumentalizing it for their own gains. So the establishment is oppressing people to the left, and then again, the establishment is oppressing people to the right. What I want to ask you, as people who are at this panel and more left-leaning, I would say, would you say that there has been any shift to the left in certain establishments, and not just, for example, in your specific countries, or also worldwide, in a way that would make people feel that there is a left push, even though this is mostly what people are saying, that everyone has had this dad who's going to say like, yeah, and now all the movies have a POC and a gay character and all that stuff. Is there something that is rooted in reality in such statements, and have you noticed it in a way where there's also institutions that are being more left-leaning and are kind of, in a way, oppressing the other side? I guess that's my question. I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, we have filmmakers here who were hearing this quite a lot, so maybe Julia.
I can see that. I can see that in the last decade, or let's say 15 years, voices became visible and with a lot of energy made themselves visible, and this feared other people. Just to make it easy, let's say the woke movement, let's call it that. It managed to get into institutions, but I think this is fragile, and I can see how fragile this is, but there's one thing I agree. There are moments, and we experienced them also at film school, when woke people, and I would consider myself woke, became unapologetic. People said something wrong, and it was like, oh, this person can never come back on stage and never teach again, and whatever he or she does to make clear she learned and she will never repeat this again. There was something unapologetic, and I think that was populism too. You talked about populism. So when this turned in some moments into populism, I think this was very not helpful. Let's say it wasn't helpful at all.
I think woke is sometimes too much, but you know, minority creators would say that they prefer it to racism or homophobia. I prefer it to racism or homophobia. So if you feel that woke is too, but that you're being oppressed by woke, well, would you be really oppressed by, you know, homophobia or racism? I wouldn't, but take your pick. It's a great question.
Olha, you also wanted to answer?
Yeah, I wanted to mention 2 points. First of all, is that we already related to creating safe spaces for different topics. So I think that we should refuse to label dissonant voices as xenophobic or regressive, but go deeply into the needs of these people, because in most cases they are not against other people. They are they do have some human needs, and they don't recognize these needs. So I think that media and culture, you know, and art could do this work. Second, I would mention Albert Hirschman's. I would relate to his work. He was an American economist writing about voice, exit, and loyalty. And he said that a client who is not satisfied and is not given a voice, he exits the system. So I think that this radical movement is a way of exiting a system. That's probably what you mentioned. So we have to prevent this on the global scale.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time is running out, so we have to keep all the other questions for the mingling part, which is now happening outside in the cafe you have right next to the Americas and the Beer Garden Convention. You're very much invited, and I hope you're all having a great Sunday, and thank you very much for attending and being here with us, and most of all, thanks to the podium. Enjoy your Sunday.